Whoa.
And I think we're good to go. Awesome. Yep. Just
Does it push out the
simply.
tweet as soon as you go live?
No, I just clicked the button. So I just did it.
Uh,
So you should see it now. It should have went live. You should be able to grab that link. That one looks pretty easy to grab.
you'd be surprised.
You would be surprised. But today on For the Love of Sports, we did it. 8 divisions, I think only in 10 days, which I think is pretty impressive. It's a testament to my friends and how much they actually wanted to do this, which was pretty fun. We would have done it in 8 straight days, but Derek decided to get drunk on a Sunday, which I can respect. It was like 75 degrees in Cleveland. So it is what it is. We appreciate him and his effort. He did a couple. Justin, I think this is your 4th one you've done. Been doing a lot of them. It's been a lot of fun, but appreciate it. This is the last one. How was it, Justin? Did you have a good time?
Oh, I had a great time. And it's funny because I think I've listened to every single second. I only saw about 20 minutes of Jared's, so I'll have to go back through and watch because he did the AFC East.
Yes.
I caught the Patriots part of it, so I'll have to go back through and kind of see what he said about the rest of the divisions. But
well, if you only listen to the first 20 minutes, you actually didn't catch all of the Patriots. There's probably another 25 minutes of Patriots talk in there as well. So it was fun.
Yeah, I was driving and I listened. It was just Patriots the entire time, so I can only assume there was more before and after.
It was about Patriots for 45 minutes, so it was impressive. Jared did an incredible job. I appreciate him and what he's done and how he did it. So it was good. He was incredible. Derek, Nick, obviously. I had my buddy Sean Tepper on. We appreciate him. Sweet Flash Man really did a great job covering that one up.
Trying to push your brand out, Mike. Sorry.
Love it. Appreciate you, bud. Appreciate you. And we are on the last one. We are on the NFC North. I didn't really do these in any order, honestly, so I don't know what that means. But I do think we may have saved the best team for last, just in terms of what the hell is going on. But I guess as a whole, how did you feel the NFC North did, I guess, last year? Obviously, we had the Packers making the NFC Championship game. They got blown out, but whatever. The Vikings were in the playoffs. They made it to the divisional round. They lost. Who did the Vikings lose to? I can't remember. They beat the Saints, and then they lost to the Packers? The 49ers. The 49ers.
Yeah.
So they both got beat the crap out of by the 49ers. The Bears were a travesty, and it was hysterical. And the Lions were the 3rd worst team in the league. Matthew Stafford went down with a back injury, so that might have had something to do with it. But it was definitely something. And honestly, they beat the Giants, so they probably were better than the Giants, just how the draft works out, I guess. So it's interesting. So how did you feel, I guess, as a whole, how did you feel the division did last year? And what do you think, again, as a whole, they could do coming into this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Bears had high expectations. For them, it was Super Bowl or bust, and they came out and you could see that most of it fell on Mitchell Trubisky and his shoulders, and he crumbled.
Yes.
I understand that the offense moved the ball much better the previous year, and it was from everything that I followed with the Bears was because he was able to use his legs to extend plays and to pick up some first downs, or just from running the ball with him. And then you bring in a guy like David Montgomery. You kind of expect him to really take the reins and kind of handle that the loading offense. And I mean, granted, he looked like a pretty good running back, and I forget what his forced tackles were, but he's always among the top 10 or so. I remember from his days at Iowa State with PFX rankings. Of like forced tackles, it was some phenomenal number for a guy his size. And he came into the league and did the same thing. The problem is the offense was so inept because Mitchell Trubisky couldn't push the ball down the field.
It was alarming how bad they were, though, considering when they came in the previous year. I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, had one of the highest betting totals.
Yep.
To win the MVP.
I was just going to say that.
And it's just, he completely crumbled isn't even the word. And it was immediately. It was from the start. I think they played the Packers in that Sunday night game. And the Packers, Adrian Amos, who, if I'm not mistaken, was on the Bears the previous year, was like, yeah, if we could just get Mitch to play quarterback, we thought we'd win. Yeah. And everyone was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, we're in for something. And they absolutely were, to say the least.
Yep, and you just keep going back to that 2017 draft class with Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. Like, okay, but the Bears traded up for Mitch Trubisky. They didn't stay at the 3rd pick, but also no one was trading up to try and grab him. So I'm not sure who they were scared by, but I get it. If you see your quarterback, you want your quarterback, go get him. It just turns out of the 3 choices, they picked the wrong one.
Yeah, they clearly picked the wrong one. It's definitely it's unfortunate, I guess, for the Bears. It's kind of, Mitch looked okay his freshman year, rookie year, whatever. And then his sophomore year, they're like, oh, okay, we got something. I think if at one point, like, he was actually considered good. And then everyone was like, all right, let's see what happens in the 3rd year. And he was complete just ass.
Yeah, he was
And
bad.
now this year, obviously, they brought in Nick Foles, so we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just the Bears obviously had high expectations. The Packers had high expectations. The Vikings had high
Yep.
expectations. The Vikings' expectations were weird though, because they were coming from a place of they were pretty bad the previous year, if I'm not mistaken. They were like 8-8, 9-7. They weren't that great.
Mhm.
Everyone thought they were going to be really, really good last year. They come into this year, they're significantly better. They actually start running the ball again. And then obviously the Packers always have high expectations. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they should go to the playoffs essentially. And
Every time.
the Lions just suck.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just going off of what you said, I mean, obviously the Vikings, once again, looking forward to this season. They're going to have high expectations again. I mean, Kirk Cousins is a good, not great quarterback. He'll do enough to not lose the game most of the time. I mean, we'll kind of see what he does going into this year without a guy like Stephon Diggs. But they added a first round talent in Justin Jefferson, so we'll talk a little bit into that. And the Lions, I just don't get it. They draft a running back early. They have a couple decent running backs already on their team. Actually, they drafted 2 running backs. They drafted another, like a scat back in the 5th round, I believe. I mean, the NFC North, they just beat each other up every year, and it always seemed to it's just like Packers, Vikings, Bears, and then the Lions are just down there at the bottom, just trying to find their way out of the gutter of the NFC North.
Yes, but forever and always, Dez didn't catch it. So I think that's pretty important. They shouldn't even have made it to that game against the Packers. They should have just lost the previous one against the Lions, because that was not a pass interference. But then Dez didn't catch it, and I think that's the most important part. So yeah, let's just go right into the Lions. Couple people they added. You want to say that first name?
Halapuli Vaitai.
Oh, that's a fun name. Halapuli Vaitai. They brought in Jamie Collins. It's a Bill Belichick disciple doing Bill Belichick things. Desmond Trufant coming over from the Falcons after they got rid of Darius Slay. They traded him away. They brought in Chase Daniel. That's fine. Danny Shelton, same thing, coming from that Patriots offense. How do you think going into the draft? I mean, obviously, when you're picking top 3, there's a lot of needs, but what were some of the most pressing needs that they had going into the draft?
After they traded away Darius Slay. That's a key thing, because you just traded away a number 1 corner in a cornerback driven league where you need a number 1 corner. I understand they brought in Desmond Trufant. He did not have a couple good years with the Falcons, so clearly there's still talent there. And then they went with their first pick and they grabbed Jeffrey Okudah. So they addressed the cornerback position right away. It was a need that they needed to address, and the need matched the talent at their pick. But yeah, I mean, they just kind of dove right into it. They need defense. Matt Patricia's defense is ranked among the worst in the league since he's taken over this team. You still have Matthew Stafford, who I mean, I still think he's a very good, very capable quarterback. He's getting up there in age. He's starting to have these injury histories because he keeps getting beat up. So they need to do a better job protecting him. And just keep giving him talent around him. Like, he has Kenny Galladay. All right, cool. And then you have a bunch of running backs that just can't stay healthy now. Theo Riddick got hurt. Kerryon Johnson got hurt. It's like, all right, cool. So I don't know. It's definitely going to be an interesting year for them. I mean, I can't see them winning more than 6 games again. It's just like a brutal division for them. I mean, we're all excited about hopefully the league schedule coming out tomorrow. We can kind of start looking at the matchups and kind of seeing where they can rank. But I mean, it's going to be difficult for them to do better than 6-7 games.
I think they're definitely going to finish in the bottom again. And I like the fact that you brought up Theo Riddick. In case anyone out there is curious, Justin tackled Theo Riddick in high school, and Theo Riddick actually wasn't even on the Lions last year. He was on the Broncos. So that's just Justin's slight plug. He just wanted to let everybody know that he tackled Theo Riddick, because he knew if he brought up Theo Riddick that I have an obligation, a contract signed, I guess, to just talk about how he tackled him one time.
Well, you didn't let me do the AFC West, so I have to throw it in there.
Well, no, exactly. We have to get it. We have to get it in some way, shape, or form. They did lose a couple people, as you said. Graham Glasnow, he actually left part of that offensive line. Devon Kennard, he is a linebacker, and that's as high praise I can give him. Ashawn Robinson leaving, as well as Tavon Wilson. So again, they have holes. You're not picking in the top 3 without a massive amount of holes. Now, I will say, I don't think they were one of the 3 worst teams in the league. Again. They Jeremy, did not know that you tackled Theo Riddick. Yeah, Jeremy, there you go. I'll tell you about it next time too. But no, picking in the top 3 again, they beat the Giants. So I mean, not to say that that's too much, but Matthew Stafford did go down, I think, about halfway through the year, and from there it was kind of a joke. I do think they have the capabilities. I think so. Picking here again, they have a lot of holes, obviously, but I don't think they were the 3rd worst team in the league, I guess, if that makes sense, due to quarterback injury. So just getting into it, as you said, Jeffrey Okudah, out of Ohio State, round 1, pick 3. That was it. Like, it was very easy, as you
Yep.
said. You're trading away Darius Slay. You're pretty much just taking a guy who's going to come in. The one thing we've seen with cornerbacks is it's very difficult. It's not the easiest. The most important positions in quarterback, left tackle, defensive line, specifically edge rusher, and cornerback. One of them is okay. You can make that transition relatively easily, and that's defensive end. We've seen it with both the Bosas. We're assuming we're going to see it with Chase Young. Cornerback, quarterback, and left tackle are not the easiest to transition in. So, what do you think it is about Jeffrey Okudah that not only he'll be successful, but he'll be successful quicker than someone like, say, DeAndre Baker?
Yeah, the talent's there, and especially coming from a DBU, I guess we can call Ohio State now. Like they're incredible putting out just defensive talent. I mean,
Don't tell Derek, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean NFL talent in general. They're becoming a powerhouse. They're becoming this new Alabama, and they're putting out these players that are producing in the NFL, unlike some of the other colleges, some of the schools that we've been watching for years. I mean, you can take. I mean, both Bosa's and Chase Young. Wow, like, could you imagine a team with just those players? Could you imagine Ohio State's team in 5 years if they kept all those players at college and then
oh my goodness,
it became an NFL school? Like, that talent right there. Think of all the corners that they've had. Think of the quarterbacks that they're putting out right now, especially with Justin Fields coming out next year. So I mean, you're just looking at a school that just keeps putting out talent, and I mean, they have the track record. So it's not so much that it's the position; it's because of the place that it's coming from. Like, they're just well coached, well schooled players with the talent. So when those two things kind of combine, the talent and the coachability, you just create like these perfect players, and that's what that's what you get in Jeffrey Okudah.
Yeah, they come out and they succeed more often than they do not, at least especially these high round picks. You know, it's crazy again to think about what that I remember I saw the tweet like right around the draft, and it was like, here's Ohio State's 2015 team. And it was just stacked. And you're like, how the hell is this possible? I don't even think Chase Young was on the team yet, because he wasn't a commit till 16 or 17, if I'm not mistaken, because he was only there for 3 years. And it was still just completely stacked. And it's like, oh my goodness, this team would have dominated in the NFL right now. And you really already made that point. So, I mean, I don't know how much more we have to talk about Jeffrey Okudah. He's going to come in, he's going to start on one of those sides, and, they're probably going to test him early, and then they're going to find out, okay, can we keep testing him, or is he going to be the guy that we should stay away from? So we'll see how that goes.
Nice thing is he does have Desmond Trufant that he can lean on. So you have an experienced veteran corner that can obviously teach him the things that he needs to do. And it's not like Okudah's taking his job or anything. Okudah will probably get matched up against the number 2 talent until proven otherwise. But I mean, Matt Patricia could probably do a lot with some of the defensive players like Jamie Collins that he brought in. And then you have these 2 corners that, I mean, they could both technically be shutdown corners. Desmond Trufant was earlier in his career, and there's kind of like injuries and just maybe it looks kind of like he just looks lethargic. He didn't look like he was enjoying his time in Atlanta. So we'll kind of see what they can put together here.
Yeah, see what happens there. And one thing I will say, I know they traded away Darius Slay, but looking a little deeper into his numbers, the last couple years especially, he was not the Darius Slay that we remember. So we'll see what happens. Maybe that trade ends up being good because they were able to snag a couple picks from the Eagles. They signed him to a big deal, and they can just replace him with Jeffrey Okudah, and now you have him for 5 years.
A third and a fifth is crazy. Like, really, that's really all you get. Like Jalen Ramsey, I understand that Jalen Ramsey. I mean, it's tier 1, tier 2, and Slay isn't that far off of Jalen Ramsey. So
I mean, Jalen Ramsey, I don't think also should have gotten. Well, okay. Here's the other thing: you get Jalen Ramsey for 1.5 years if you're the Rams, and you do that.
Yeah,
they had to sign Slay to a deal because I think he was his contract was expiring, so they had to do something. So a little different. Ramsey is also, you don't have to pay him big money for another 1.5 years, right? He's on that controllable aspect side. They're going to pay him a lot of money. We'll see what happens. But I see it is a very weird concept. So we'll see what happens. So then you already alluded to it as well. Round 2, pick 35, DeAndre Swift, running back out of Georgia.
Yep.
They have Kerryon Johnson. You're higher on him than I am. I think he's okay. You think he's pretty damn good. We'll see what happens there. But why the hell are they doing this? They have so many other holes. Running back should be the icing on the cake at this point in the NFL. You have decent running backs on your roster already too, unless they just do not believe in Kerryon Johnson at all. He's been injured a little bit. Where the hell does this pick come from, and why so early?
I think it's because the Lions, and they haven't said anything yet, or at least I haven't seen anything yet, but I think it's because the Lions had Swift so high on their big board that when they picked in round 2, it's like, okay, like he's there. We have to take him.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I keep thinking about it. I'm like, okay, when the Vikings, when they were drafting Adrian Peterson, a lot of people were calling not to draft him because they had Chester Taylor. It's like, okay,
Ah,
you have Chester Taylor, but you have this potential all-time running back coming out of
mm.
Oklahoma. His only knock was injury history, which, I mean, yes, that's a big one, especially
One
running
was a
backs. But
collarbone, though, if I'm not mistaken, with
yeah,
Adrian
it was
Peterson.
it,
He
it
just
was
got landed on weird.
it was some weird ones. But yes, and obviously who knows. But the running back position, you need to be a tough, gritty SOB. Otherwise, you're just not going to pan out in the league. But they went and they took probably the best player on the board, and you know what? Why the hell not? Kerryon Johnson's been hurt. Bo Scarborough is a bruising running back who looked kind of okay. Ty Johnson, and then they drafted a running back and Jason Huntley a little bit later. But the one thing that pissed me off is Bob Quinn, I believe it was Bob Quinn, the GM of the Lions, came out and said, we're going to do a running back by committee. Really? Like I've never been a fan of running back by committee. I mean, we see it work with the 49ers, but that's just because Kyle Shanahan is masterful at these running games schemes that he draws up. The Lions don't have that. They have Jim Bob Cooter as their offensive coordinator, and he just kind of likes to chuck the ball down the field with Matt Stafford. So unless they're really trying to transition to a power running game, which, as noted by the two guards they drafted later in this draft, there's a possibility for them doing that. But I feel like they could have traded out of that spot, picked up a few more picks to add to a depleted roster, and then kind of gone from there. But you know what? Maybe Swift comes out because, I mean, he was a first-round talent coming out. It's just the running back position is devalued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you make a good point. We always kind of say, well, why the heck did they grab him here? Well, if they had him 20-something on their board overall and they're picking at 39 and they see him there, like, how do you not jump at that opportunity? How do you not say, hell yeah, let's go? And I get it. You know, it makes sense, and you got to do what you got to do when it comes to that stuff. But I just don't. I agree with you. I mean, J.K. Dobbins was on the board till 55. Now, maybe they saw Swift was significantly better than him. I'm not a talent scout. I thought Dobbins was better personally, but that's just me. So I don't know. We'll see, and I guess we will see moving forward on kind of how that's going to work out, and if it's going to be a running back by committee. And I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me personally, and I apologize. Pick 35, not 39.
Yeah.
And, we'll see what happens. So in round 3, 67 overall, they go with Julian Okwara, edge out of Notre Dame. Yep. Older brother is also playing for the Detroit Lions, if I'm not mistaken.
Originally, defensive end. Yep.
Yeah, originally drafted by the Giants, let go in some capacity, and now goes to the Lions. How do you think he is going to fit over there in the Lions, on the Lions defense?
Yeah, they needed edge rushers. I mean, Trey Flowers, obviously, a big free agent signing, kind of did all right last year. You bring in Danny Shelton, who's more of a run stuffing defensive tackle. John Atkins is kind of whatever. Their defensive line depth is kind of meh at best. And then obviously you bring in Jamie Collins, who the way Bill Belichick used him was incredible. But every other person where Collins has ever gone, like with the Browns, it never seemed to pan out. So I'm not sure exactly what it was with Bill Belichick and Collins' relationship, but Belichick knew how to get the best out of him. So maybe going over to Patricia will help him a little bit because maybe they're going to kind of run the same schemes. But Belichick is just masterful at defense and using players in the way that he needs to use them week in and week out. But Okwara, like that edge rush that you need someone with some get off on that defensive end position, because like Austin Bryant, Frank Herron, like you just have a bunch of guys, Deshaun Hand, Jonathan Wynn, like a bunch of no-name guys who just haven't really put together anything in their career.
I love it. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when moving forward. And Sia, I guess he's a little late to the game. Answers. Yeah, he's gonna need. But we'll finish up. Sia, we're gonna finish up on the Lions, and then that's gonna be the end of the Lions. Justin will tell us how he tackled Theo Riddick that one time, so more people can hear about it. Sure. But I agree. I mean, you need to build from an offensive standpoint. So they went for 3 of the 4 most important positions in their top 3 picks, and 4 in their first 5, or however we want to say it. But I mean, cornerback in Okudah, running back in DeAndre Swift, we'll see what happens there. Getting an edge rusher out of Notre Dame. I mean, I know he wasn't really anywhere near the first round, Julian Okwara was, but he has the opportunity, he has the abilities, coming from a big name school at least. I mean, can you name 5 defensive ends that came out of Notre Dame recently?
Off the top of my head, no.
That's what I mean. Like, so that's the only thing. Like, I don't know. We'll see. I hope it works, and we'll see what happens. But I don't know. It's something. It's something to just make note of. Round 3, pick 75, their 4th pick in the draft, Jonah Jackson, guard out of Ohio State. So there we go. As you said, you're talking about that power run game, and then we'll also bring it up to pick 4, round 4, 121 overall, Logan Stenberg, guard out of Kentucky. Are both of these potential? I mean, I assume the gentleman from Ohio State more, but do both of these have the potential to kind of come in and start sooner rather than later, especially with them losing a guard in free agency?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I love both of these guards coming out of college. I was really hoping that the Jaguars would actually draft both of them at some point. Just they went a little bit higher than I would have taken them, especially Stenberg. I really thought that Stenberg was more like a fifth round depth guy who had the ability to kind of build upon what he was putting together at Kentucky, like put together like a hell of a running game with Benny Snell a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But Jonah Jackson, also Rutgers grad transfer
that's him?
to
That's
Ohio State.
awesome.
Yeah. So obviously improved his draft stock tremendously with the transfer to Ohio State. So I mean, they're building this power run game. I mean, both of those guys, you're drafting like these big, powerful maulers in the game. Stenberg's a little bit more polished in pass pro, but like you're getting two guys that can really just run the ball. You're going to be able to run the ball up the gut, especially. And it's funny because this kind of justifies the DeAndre Swift pick in the second round, because now you have like this formidable front that you're going to kind of push the ball. And we're going to possibly see Matthew Stafford put together the most efficient season of his career, because they'll be doing a lot of play action passes. They'll be doing a lot more things with the running game that'll kind of open the ball up, and they'll be able to push the ball a little bit further down the field, especially when you have those big targets like Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. And Matthew Stafford, again, I don't agree with the pick, but Matthew Stafford's never had a running back his entire career. I mean, they drafted Amir Abdullah, if I'm not mistaken, out of Nebraska. He never did anything. Theo Riddick, again, is he's a third down back more than anything. Zach Zenner, I think, may at this point be one of the best backs he's ever had on his team, which, come on, man. And maybe, you don't know. I don't know. We'll check the tape. We'll check the tape on that one. But I definitely think, again, if you can bring in these offensive linemen, you can protect Matt Stafford. I mean, he broke his back last year, if I'm not mistaken, in some capacity, one of the vertebrae. So we'll see what happens, man. I don't know. The Lions, they're going to be the Lions. They're always going to be the Lions. And again, no matter what they really do, I don't think they're coming out of this anytime soon. Did you think, some people had the consideration, did you think they would ever actually draft Tua in any capacity? Because a lot of people kind of brought it up. They're like, Matt Stafford's kind of old. You have the opportunity to grab this next guy. Like, why not him?
I really thought they would consider it. But I get that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn are in win now. Like they can't put together another losing season. The ownership won't give them another chance at another season where they're winning 5 or 6 games. There's just no way. Like they're going to get fired if they don't at least come close to sniffing the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think there was some consideration, but at the same time, you're putting Tua out there with an offensive line that was pretty beat up last year and didn't look super great. And Matthew Stafford, who's a more durable quarterback than Tua was in his career, you wouldn't want to take that chance, especially with the possibility of you just getting fired the next season. It's not like it's going to buy you a couple extra years. Like I'm pretty sure you're already on the hot seat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good point. And that's the frustrating thing about the NFL is in certain situations, you kind of know, maybe this is the right thing to do, but then it comes down to everybody's job is on the line every single day. And if remember a couple of years ago when they beat the hell out of New England on like Monday or Sunday night, and everyone's like, "All right, here we go," and that was a joke. Nothing ever happened there, so it is what it is. So moving on to the 5th round, some more help for Matthew Stafford. It looks like most of this has been all other than cornerback out of Jeffrey Okudah out of Ohio State and Okwara out of Notre Dame. Everything's been pretty offensive heavy so far, especially with some of these higher picks. So 166 overall, 5th round, Quintez Cephas, wide receiver out of Wisconsin. That's not a great note you have there. So I'll let you tell me why he went in the 5th round.
Yeah. So I mean, there were a few things, but he did miss all 2018 with the sexual assault charges. The charges were dropped. So I mean, I'm not going to get into the legal matter because I can't speak to the legal jargon.
Sia, who's watching right now, he's a lawyer, so maybe he can tell us about it one day.
If he wants to look it up, I don't want to misquote something. Then all of a sudden we're getting yelled at. But yeah, and then he went to the combine, just had a terrible 40. It's like he ran like a 4.73. Like he's a 6'1", 200-pound wide receiver. How are you running a 4.73? So I understand that these guys didn't have pro days. A lot of times at the combine. I don't want to give them the nerve aspect, the nerve factor, because this is like the most important job interview of your life, and I understand that people would be a little nervous when they're going into it. But I mean, come on, man, that's a terrible 40. He never got a chance to build upon it. Like maybe if he ran like a 4.6 something, it would make sense because he is a possession receiver. He's a guy that you're going to throw the ball to a lot. He's tough over the middle, pretty good hands. So just give him the ball and then kind of just help move the chains along a little bit. That way you can have Golladay kind of doing his thing on the outside, and that way you can open up the middle, or you can kind of open it up deep down the field for him.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll see what happens. I mean, if he can kind of just be, as you said, that possession receiver, and he can kind of just do what he needs to do, I think, again, you're gonna find something in the offense because Galladay is clearly the number one there. And they're who's their number two? Did you say it? I missed it.
It's Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones. Okay.
Yep.
So he's a weird number
Well,
two. He'll
I
have
mean,
like 3 games where he's just blows up,
yeah.
and then the rest of the season he does nothing. It's very confusing.
I mean, they still do have Danny Amendola. He is the starting slot wide receiver as
Oh.
of now, but I understand that he's been getting up there in age. So you want to kind of start looking towards the future, even
Mhm.
though you are on the hot seat a little bit. But you just want to keep adding talent.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cephas had his troubles, but maybe he can kind of put together something a little special with the Lions next year.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So then a couple of these late round picks, 5th round overall, 172, Jason Huntley, running back out of New Mexico State.
Mhm.
Round 6, 197, John Pennicini, defensive tackle out of Utah. Round number 7, 235, Jay-Sean Cornell, defensive tackle out of Ohio State. I guess they like those Ohio State boys. And then notable undrafted free agent you wrote down here, Hunter Bryant, tight end out of Washington. So tell me a little bit about some of these guys, just off the cuff.
Yeah, sure. So we'll start with Huntley. He is a Theo Riddick type. He's like that 5'10", 185 pound scat back that, I mean, you kind of need that explosiveness out of the backfield. I understand that DeAndre Swift is going to be a 3-down back, but it's kind of nice when you bring that change of pace person in there. It's someone like you don't have a guy like this on the roster. They had great success with Theo Riddick being there for all those years. So try and find a guy in his mold that you can maybe draft and develop, and also help out in the returning game a little bit too. Pennicini is just a giant run-stuffing defensive tackle. There's not much more to talk to about that. He's just going to kind of help clog up the middle, just add depth to the defensive line. Cornell's an interesting one. Like he's going to play the 3 technique in the Lions scheme. He was he was like I think 6'4", 285 pound defensive tackle. So I believe he actually played the big defensive end on the other side of Chase Young when Chase Young was kind of going after the ball. This guy's kind of holding the one side, just making sure that there's no runs coming his way. The little note that I found about him is he actually went to the same school as Joe Mauer, the catcher for the Twins, and Michael Floyd, who was a former receiver from the Cardinals. So kind of cool, kind of seeing that pedigree come from a high school. And then Hunter Bryant, I really like the Hunter Bryant pick. I honestly, I still can't believe he went undrafted. He was honestly on top 100 of most people's big boards. So I'm not sure if it was like the interview process, if something else happened, if there's just kind of more that we don't know. But I mean, as far as I can tell, I haven't seen anything to kind of knock the guy's character. I mean, he was a good tight end at Washington, especially for a school that, I mean, Jacob Eason was kind of slinging the ball around. Like you had this big tight end that was constantly open over the middle. We got to see his answers there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Sia, I will read that so everybody does get it, and I want everyone to know it's Sia Najad is telling us at Sia Najad on Twitter. But yeah, I mean, I think I was confused. I'll be honest, I don't watch too many Washington games, so I don't know that much about Hunter Bryant, but I did see his name come up a lot. And I think maybe one factor of that is pretty much the entire third day, he was in Mel Kiper's top 10 left. And that's usually something that when he's there, I mean, I'm not going to, live and die by what Mel Kiper says, but I definitely think, he has some reasonable understanding of what's going on. Dan Jarmara moved the sticks, all these guys.
I was going to say, it wasn't even just Mel Kiper. It was like every single person had them on like top 100, top 125 of their big board, which, I mean, that's the first couple of rounds of the draft. Like, how did this guy go undrafted? And were the Lions the only team that put in a claim for him to bring him into their roster? Like the Lions just drafted TJ Hawkinson with their first round pick last year, like a top 10 pick. I get it though. Like you bring in talent. Like you bring in guys that you think are going to help produce, and he's definitely one of those guys that can stick in the league for a bunch of years, just being a good pass catching tight end.
There you go. That's all you need now. I mean, that's what teams love, especially with the Belichick model with Patricia. It's something that makes sense. So we were talking about Quintez Cephas and the sexual assault charges. So Sia, I appreciate you helping out, but Cephas went to trial and was acquitted by a jury within an hour. That's a very short deliberation, which indicates that the 2 female claimants,
yeah.
Thank you, were not believed at all by the jury. Also, the fact that he went to trial instead of taking some sort of plea deal on lesser charges means he and his attorney definitely believed in their case. That combined with the short jury deliberation conveys to me, Sia, that the charges were quite dubious. Oh, coming in with that lawyer talk, Sia. We always appreciate you and your help, man. And so I think that's very important. And because Sia helped us out, well, first, let's say, how do you think the Lions did overall in their draft this year?
They addressed the needs that they had, and that's pretty much as you can ask for them. Like there's only so many picks that you have unless you're trading back and acquiring multiple picks.
Mhm.
Did they do enough to help push themselves into a playoff position? No, I just don't think there's enough talent on the roster. Could DeAndre Swift come in and kind of change how that offense looks? Absolutely. He can come in and 1,400 yards, catches the ball pretty well out of the backfield, decent amount of touchdowns, can kind of open the game up for the rest of the team and really make that offense kind of flutter or flourish. But that defense just doesn't look good. I mean, unless Okudah and Trufant put up like this, like if all of a sudden they become like this quarterback tandem that's like 1-2 in the league, it's difficult to see them having a guy on their team get more than 10 sacks. So I mean, I don't know, 6 wins is kind of the ceiling that I see for them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they'll be very good. So tell Sia, Justin, and everybody listening the time about that one time you tackled Theo Riddick.
Sure. So I believe it was my junior year because we were actually at Immaculata. And Immaculata is a high school that was one of our. I went to Hunter and Central in Flemington, New Jersey. So Immaculata was actually one of our rivals. They weren't in our conference, but it was another school that was like on par with how good we were because we were constantly in the state championships. I think all 4 years I was there, we were in the states. All 4 years, we won it my freshman year. We lost my.
That's fine. Nobody cares about Hunter Central.
Sure,
when did you tackle Thierry?
Yeah, so it was actually on kickoff. I wasn't very good, so I didn't play a whole lot. But I got in on kickoff towards the end of the game, and I was running down, and all of a sudden, Theo Riddick was kind of just there. And for people that don't know Theo Riddick, like he's this incredible scat back. Like it's impossible to tackle him. He juked into me as I was kind of like falling into him. So I just kind of like wrapped his legs up, and then I forget who it was. Someone came from behind me and just laid him out. But I was like, okay, so I wrapped into his legs, so I get the first part of the tackle. I think it's not a solo tackle, but I'll take it. It's a tackle in the stat category.
And I will tell everybody about it. Do not worry.
I do remember getting up and being like, whoa, I just tackled Theo Riddick. And then he stood up in front of me. I was like, I'm taller than this dude. Like, it's funny because like hearing about this kid, like all throughout New Jersey, like everyone knew who he was. Like he was like this incredible athlete going to Notre Dame to play wide receiver. But it was like, whoa, like he's not that big. But you know what? He was strong. He was a thick kid, but pretty great awesome. Career for him.
I do love it. It's a story that I will elaborate and hyperbolize for the rest of my life. So I'm excited for it. And Nick, you are right. Matt Patricia has been practicing ukulele. So I do think that has given him some extra level of confidence moving into the rest of the season. So we'll see what happens there. So moving on from the Lions, we'll go on to the Bears, finished 3rd in the division. Many people had them going to the playoffs at a minimum, potentially going to the Super Bowl, and they were bad. They traded their first. They traded multiple firsts away, and one of them was Khalil Mack, so they didn't actually get their first round this year. Their 4th was to get David Montgomery, so that was for last year. Their 5th was for Nick Foles, which that again is ridiculous. So yeah, they bring in Nick Foles. They add Robert Quinn on, which just seemed to me like was a ridiculous deal. And then they followed that up with an even more ridiculous deal to Jimmy Graham. They at least restructured Nick Foles' deal, I guess. They lost Kyle Long to retirement, Nick Witkowski, Leonard Floyd, and HaHa Clinton-Dix all to free agency. I mean, before all the craziness, you know what? Screw it. Let's just get into the craziness. I mean, do you think Robert Quinn was worth 5 years, $70 million after he hasn't really, I mean, he was good last year. But was he great last year? Like, I don't think he was worth that much money. What was he? I don't know.
He played well on a Cowboys roster that had DeMarcus Lawrence kind of garnering all of the attention. And it's funny because he'll be going to a similar type situation where Khalil Mack will be once again the center of attention. It's the key is to not let Mack ruin the game plan. So all of a sudden, like you definitely bolster the offense because Robert Quinn as a second defensive end, like the rushing the opposite of Khalil Mack, that's great. Like, why would you not want a guy like that that's going to come in and immediately help just help the defense overall, especially for a defense that was so stout last year. Only problem was Mitchell Trubisky and the offense was so bad, so that the defense was constantly on the field. So they look tired. Their stats obviously get a little skewed because of that, but I don't know. I like the pick. I just don't understand how he flipped a coin between the two spots that he wanted to go to in Atlanta. And he was like, okay, I'm going to go to Chicago instead of Atlanta. Like, all right. Like, so you really just didn't care. They offered you the same deal. And I guess looking at it, I would pick the Bears. I wouldn't flip a coin and then just get the Bears.
I wouldn't tell anybody I flipped the coin. Like I might have flipped the coin, but I don't actually tell anybody. I also would have went to Atlanta, live in a dome, warm city, but that's a me thing. So yeah, I mean, it's it's not the fact that he did it, it's that he
How we
came
did
out
it.
and said it. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, just a little bit of self-awareness there is probably something you need. So that is something. Jimmy Graham, we are both in agreement on this one. Jimmy Graham sucks, and this dude just keeps making money. So respect to him. Like, I'm not going to try and take a single dollar away from him. But the fact that people keep paying him money is insane to me.
Yeah. Yeah, especially for the deals that he's been getting too. But and it's weird, especially for the Bears having like they saw
11?
him up close and well now it's down to 9. They've cut
Oh,
a
they
couple
cut
guys
2
since
tight
then.
ends.
And there were nobodies, but I mean I can read off the list of tight ends, but it's like
We'll
they
get there.
drafted Adam Shaheen. So like what are you doing? Like tight end is I guess a depth like you have a very strong unit right now at tight end, but hell, it's tight end. Like there's many other positions that you need in this roster,
Yeah.
quarterback especially. I get it. Like you trade for Nick Foles. Nick Foles' best friend is tight ends. Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, they got rid of Trey Burton last year. I forgot about him. So I don't know. Like, what the hell are they doing with all these tight ends? Ryan Pace must really love them, or Adam Gase, or not Adam Gase.
Matt Nagy.
Matt Nagy must really just love tight ends, but
I don't know, man.
I don't get it.
It makes no sense to me. The fact that he keeps getting paid money is just insane to me. And then also they trade for Nick Foles. I know you were happy about it. I thought it was a 4th. Used to have here that's a 5th. I'll take your word for it. You're the Jaguars fan. The fact that they trade for him while Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, and Andy Dalton all became available in the offseason, was it just ineptitude on the Bears' part? Which probably was it. They were worried that they weren't going to get their guy. I mean, why would they give away a draft pick when in reality they didn't even have to pay him that much money? Jameis Winston is making $1.1 million this year.
Yeah, especially for a team that you would think is like they're very close in the salary cap. And if all of a sudden Mitchell Trubisky comes out and has a great year next year, what do you do about Nick Foles' contract? Like I understand they kind of restructured a little bit, but you're still going to have a bunch of dead cap next year to go along with Mac's deal, Quinn's deal. Like you have like all the. I mean, I think Kyle. I forget how the dead cap works for retired players, but I think Kyle Long's dead cap still applies to next season. So it's funny how it still kind of screws over teams once a player retires. So I don't know. We'll kind of see what they do, but. I mean, as a Jaguars fan, I was excited. I was ecstatic. I was happy when they brought in Nick Foles. I was hoping there were other guys. Like, I mean, Alex Smith was the guy that I've been wanting for the past couple of years, especially with that 2017 defense. That was the guy that I wanted. So I understand that you kind of go after Nick Foles, the guy who's won a Super Bowl. I mean, at the end of the day, he seems like a great guy. He's a good locker room guy. Players really like him. So it's not like he's going to come in like instantly take Mitch Trubisky's job. He's going to push him. But at the same time, he's still going to coach him up and teach him. Just because he's an ultimate team player.
Yeah, I think he takes Mitchell Trubisky's job day one, and they don't look back. I think they are just going to not even play him unless it's a necessity at this year, but we'll see what happens. So they did lose some other players on the defense as well, but let's just get into it. So as you said, they have 1 million tight ends. They signed Jimmy Graham. So of course, their first pick, round 2, 43 overall, they picked Cole Kmet, tight end out of Notre Dame. I don't know. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I don't get it. They paid this guy who's not good money, and then they use their first most important pick on a tight end. Why don't they just do one or the other? I just don't get it, man. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Especially when, like, you do have some other needs. Like you have some, you kind of have a need at left tackle. Right guard is kind of whatever. So like offensive line, you definitely could have used an upgrade on. So you got after another tight end. So what does he kind of help block a little bit more? Like, is that kind of what they're planning on doing? Are they still going to use like a lot of 2 tight end sets? But the problem is when you have a roster, you just drafted Adam Shaheen. You draft Cole Kmet. You sign Jimmy Graham to a stupid deal. And then you have like Demetrius Harris and like a few other guys that will make the roster. And I mean, granted, they have 9 now, but they'll cut it down to like 5 or so. But still, like, why are you bringing in and paying all these tight ends that you don't need right now? You need a left tackle. You need a right guard. You need some more receivers that can kind of open the game up for Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles, whoever plays quarterback next year. Or hell, draft another freaking quarterback. Why why not take the most important position in sports for a team that's already built to win right now? The only thing they need is a quarterback. The rest of the roster is decent enough. Obviously, you can get by with how the offensive line is built together right now, especially with the Kyle Long retirement. But I just don't get it. Like, does Ryan Pace just love tight ends? I don't know. It was one of the picks that it infuriated me when they did it. because it was like, okay, cool, Cole Kmet, pretty good tight end. He'll go somewhere that the team will utilize him correctly. All right, cool. Go with the freaking Bears, where you're just gonna get lost in the depth chart and
Mhm.
never gonna see the light of day.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. They're gonna play Jimmy Graham, right? You don't sign him to that much money. I don't know the exact details of the contract, but it was more than he absolutely should have gotten, not even a question. So it's confusing, it's ridiculous, but now I kind of only expect it from the Bears. I kind of expect these things. So it is what it is. So moving on, round 2, pick 50. So they had 2 second round picks relatively close to each other as well. Jalen Johnson, cornerback out of Utah.
Mhm.
A lot of people had him going in the first round, if I'm not mistaken. I know there was a million secondary people coming out of secondary players, defensive back, safeties coming out of Utah in this draft in particular. But I did notice a lot of people had him going in the first round. Why do you think he slipped, and why do you think the Bears took him where they did?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes from the injury history, and especially for a cornerback where the Bears, the corners that they bring in, they need to be able to tackle. It's not like you're going to go out and draft a tackle or draft a corner that isn't going to like CJ Henderson for the Jaguars, just kind of just to put it on top of myself. You draft a guy who is a very good cover corner, can run with any receiver out there, but when it comes to tackling, he's not the greatest at it, or is he? And he's also not willing to do it. Jalen Johnson is willing, his body doesn't handle it well, and especially with the way a lot of corners, they're not as big as especially with some of these running backs coming out there now. The way the tight end position is changing, how big fast some of these wide receivers are, you need to be able to tackle. When you have a history of shoulder injuries, that doesn't bode well for the future because you're using your shoulders to make most of these tackles. You're wrapping up, and a lot of times, if Derrick Henry is coming, if Derrick Henry is coming bearing it down, what are you going to do? You can't step out of the way. You have to go and you have to find a way to tackle him. And I mean, not to bring myself up, but when I was playing corner in high school, I'm not going to say I had a labrum injury, but I had shoulder problems. And I found myself shying away from my left arm because my left arm was constantly hurting. So I would find ways to tackle with the right shoulder. And that doesn't go well because if you're trying to guard the boundary, you need to be able to guard the boundary depending on how the running back's going to try and shake you off. So, but you know what? Jalen Johnson, he's a great corner. It's just the injury history that's really going to really dropped him on a lot of people's draft boards.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. I mean, they did lose a safety in Clinton Dix, but I mean, having cornerbacks is always a necessity in today's NFL, as we know that they're very, very necessary. So now, as we said, they traded a bunch of stuff away. So now their last few picks, they're all 5th round or lower. So 155 overall, Travis Gibson, edge rusher out of Tulsa, 163 overall, Kindle Vildor. Man, they got some weird names. Cornerback out of Georgia Southern. And then another 5th round pick, 173 overall, Darnell Mooney, wide receiver out of Tulane. So they didn't really go Power 5 too much in this draft. I mean, you got Notre Dame and Utah, and then Tulsa, Georgia Southern, and Tulane with their 3 5th round picks. How do you feel about any of these guys? How do you feel they fit? I mean, all of them, the first 2 defensive, and then obviously grabbing another wide receiver is helpful, but that late, you don't know what the hell you're getting.
For as much as I hated their 2nd round picks, I loved their 5th round picks. Like their 5th round picks honestly saved their whole draft. Like you get a fantastic athletic, like raw pass rusher out of Travis Gibson, who will immediately provide depth behind a bunch of very great defensive ends. And I mean, depending on how this defense shapes up, he could be one of the steals of the draft at that slot where they drafted him. Then you drafted Vildor out of Georgia Southern. He's probably going to start his career kind of at slot corner, play a little nickel, and kind of do whatever he can to make the roster and really start playing. But there's opportunity for him to kind of grow and become an outside starting corner. And then Mooney's a fast wide receiver, which you really need some explosivity on the explosiveness. According to you,
no, you showed me explosivity is a word.
It flows on my mouth a little bit better. But a guy that can go down the field and really can help open up this offense a little bit, and especially also a little bit to the return game.
And so, but with all 3 of those picks, I mean, Georgia Southern in particular, I mean, you're not really playing too many people at Tulane. You're not really playing too many people at Georgia Southern. You're not really getting too much out of Tulsa. Is that why they went in the 5th round? Because you're not totally sure? I mean, it sounds like you're very high on most of their athleticism and their ability just against much, much lesser talent.
Yes, no, exactly. Like, it just kind of happens that way. Like you find these small school prospects, and that's why you don't see guys from Tulane going in the 1st round. Like you just don't see that just because of the level of competition they were playing. But it was funny because I'll bring up one of the other podcasts that you had the other day. I think it was with Jared. But you sometimes these smaller school guys, they come in and they kind of grow into their bodies when they kind of get to college. I knew a kid from high school. He was 5'6", freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. Freshman year of college, he grew 8 inches. He was 6'4", and he put on, I think it was 45 pounds. And it's funny because he got cut every year in high school, playing wide receiver. He wasn't big, he wasn't fast, he wasn't good at anything. And all of a sudden he became like this athletic freak. And he's like, I think he was like on the recreational volleyball team for I forget what school he went to, but it's like, all of a sudden he kind of just like grew into his body and just became like this absolute, like I saw him at my high school reunion. I'm like, what the hell happened to you, man? So that's just kind of the way it goes with some of these players.
And it happens. It's unfortunate, but I really do appreciate you reliving the glory days back in high school and how much fun you had. But it's true. I mean, Derek did bring it up. A lot of these guys, especially going to smaller schools, they clearly have some sort of ability and grasp of the game. It's just they might not be as athletic freaks like a lot of the guys that are going to any of these Power 5 schools, essentially. So it's definitely something that makes sense. And, hopefully they do pan out for the Bears. But again, I want to see all these guys get paid. I think that's the most important part. And then they had 2 picks in the 7th round, 226 overall. Arlington Hambright, offensive tackle out of Colorado. What a name. And 227, Lachavious Simmons. My goodness, this was probably the all name draft. Easily. But how do you feel about these guys, offensive tackle and guard, trying to fortify that line a little bit with 7th round picks?
Yeah, in its depth. I mean, you draft Hambright out of Colorado. He played left tackle, he played right tackle, so a guy that you can kind of use as a rotational piece. And then Simmons is just a guard out of Tennessee State. So you're basically adding to what I said. When you need a left tackle, you need a right guard. So you waited till the end of the draft to grab 2 guys to do that. So I was a little confused with where they selected them, but with the way their 5th round kind of slotted up, it was like, okay, well, you grabbed great talent at that point, so maybe you grab some depth pieces that you can maybe kind of grow and mold into players that will end up playing for them eventually.
And so, I mean, it sounds like they did a lot of the things they needed to do. Did not address quarterback, which again is kind of weird, especially with some of the guys that were still on the board in the 7th round. I don't know. You like their 3 5th round picks. I apologize, the 5th round, not 7th round. You really like their 3 5th round picks, but I think again, there's something they could have done. But if this is the way the board shakes out, this is the board way it shakes out. I don't think those offensive linemen are going to do too much. If they can do anything, that's a positive, and we'll see what happens. Tight end is going to be an interesting position. I would say do not draft any Bears tight ends in your fantasy football drafts. I think that's very important and pretty easy. So moving forward, we have the Minnesota Vikings. They added Michael Pierce, and they lost a lot. They lost Trey Waynes, Linval Joseph, Mackenzie Alexander, Xavier Rhodes, Andrew Sinejo, Everson Griffin, still potentially, and they traded away Stephon Diggs. Got that 1st round pick, got a 4th as well, if I'm not mistaken. There's some swapping in there, but moving. I mean, this is now 2 years in a row. Essentially, the Vikings just have this mass exodus from their defense. Obviously, they need more of these defensive pieces, but moving into the draft, I mean, like, which of the positions are most important in your mind moving forward?
They needed corners. Like you just mentioned all the players that they just lost. And it was all guys they drafted in the 1st or 2nd round, like Trey Waynes, Mackenzie Alexander, and Xavier Rhodes. Xavier Rhodes was an all-pro corner 2 years ago, and all of a sudden he comes out last year and
he was trash.
He looks terrible, and kind of weird. Why? Like, was there an injury that we don't know about? But also, if the Vikings didn't want to keep him, that says something more about him than it does the Vikings. So clearly, it was attitude, character. Who knows? Just kind of just speculating at this point, but. And then he goes and he signs a decent deal with the Colts. So we'll kind of see how he does there. But they came in, they let all their top corners go. They drafted Mike Hughes out of Central Florida a couple of years ago. So bringing in and they drafted 3 corners in this draft. So it's just kind of like, okay, one of them has to stick.
Exactly.
We still need a slot guy also to come in. So it's like, okay, cool. Let's just draft a bunch of corners and kind of see how they can do.
It's definitely interesting. You usually don't see that though, like that many pieces off of defense again 2 years in a row, especially from like one position with Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes, Mackenzie Alexander. I think is he slot or is he safety? I don't know off the top of my head. Sendejo. I mean, it's just crazy to see all of how that happens. And it is what it is, but they have a million picks, and they were even able to take some of those picks and turn them into picks next year, which is always a good thing if you could do something like that. So coming in, as they traded away Stephon Diggs. So what did they do? They took that pick, if I'm not mistaken, and they turned it into Justin Jefferson, wide receiver out of LSU. Everybody on that LSU team that was draft eligible or eligible to play in the NFL is there. And the other 2, I think, are going to be there next year, if I'm not mistaken. So how did you feel he fits into the offense? And is he more of a comp to Stephon Diggs, or is he a different piece that they're going to be able to play with?
Completely different pieces, and mainly because Justin Jefferson played slot at LSU, where he had 111 catches last year, 109 came out of slot. So clearly he doesn't have a whole lot of experience, but also given that wide receiver talent that they have there, I understand why he was playing slot. Like his skill set matched what they needed to do, because you had Chase on the outside, you have Terrence Marshall also on the outside, Thaddeus Moss in the middle, and then Stephen Sullivan also kind of somehow got drafted over Thaddeus Moss. I still understand it, but the tight end position is an enigma to me.
Not the Bears though. The Bears they got it.
They know what they're doing. But you bring Jefferson in. This is the spot I didn't see him going. I really saw Justin Jefferson going to the Eagles, becoming the slot receiver of the future, and then kind of developing and seeing if they can kind of grow him on the outside. He goes to the Vikings, who they only play 2 wide receiver sets. So you have Adam Thielen on one side, and then you have now Justin Jefferson on the other side. So there's not going to be a slot wide receiver. So they're definitely they must have already had some ideas in mind with Justin Jefferson, or at the same time, do they panic and they're like, wait, why is Justin Jefferson here? Why is this talent here? Like, he should have gone sooner than this. He was projected top 20. I mean, granted, where they selected him, it wasn't far off of that, but they must have had him high enough at the board, and they must see something that they can kind of move him to the outside.
Yeah, I think, again, he was a product of a system that just had so much talent in it that, I mean, being the slot receiver in that offense is still pretty damn good. What did you say? He had 109 catches? That's insane. That is insane. What that offense was able to do, obviously, is it doesn't make any sense. We're probably going to see it again, because that's just how college football works. But the fact that they had that much insane talent and they were able to do as much as they did with it was pretty much just romping everyone along the way. It was interesting. So I always have liked Justin Jefferson. It's not like, I know he really came on this year, but I'm pretty sure he was pretty decent the year prior as well. So it's not like he's just a one-hit wonder in that sense, but we'll see. A lot of people did have him going to the Eagles, and that was pretty much like on everybody's board at some point. And then all of a sudden they picked Jalen Reagor. So he's able to drop that one extra spot. And I don't know, as we were talking about it before, if they had him high on their board and they obviously needed a wide receiver, hey, why not take him, see what you can do? I mean, they think they're smart people over there. I know they just lost Kevin Stefanski, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know who exactly is going to be the offensive coordinator there for the Vikings, but I definitely think they'll be capable.
Gary Kubiak.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Weird. I totally forgot about that. That's interesting. He's
good friends with Mike Zimmer. So they've always kind of done that a little bit. They've always kind of gone exactly.
It's definitely going to be something. So I'm curious how that one works out, and we'll see what happens. So then, if I'm not mistaken, they had the 25th overall pick. They were able to trade back with the Packers.
Yes.
Just double check. All right. Yep. That's that pick in a couple. They were able to trade back, so then they were able to grab even more, and they were still able to grab then a cornerback, Jeff Gladney, with the 31st overall pick out of TCU. Big 12 defense, man. I mean, I love the Big 12, and I don't watch the defense. I've never seen a cornerback cover a wide receiver in the Big 12. So, I mean, I don't know. Tell me about Gladney out of TCU.
Yeah, I mean, he's a solid corner. Mike Zimmer loves drafting corners, and then it's especially for how their defense is going to be shaping up this year. He loves drafting corners and then making them sit a year. And he's always done this. He's always had the corner come in, make him sit a year. It's kind of like the quarterback position to him, where they need to kind of sit, get stronger, get bigger, learn the game.
Who do they sit? There's nobody on the team. We just said they got rid of everybody.
That's what I was getting to. It's like, okay, all of a sudden, like you're drafting, they end up drafting three pretty good corners. So that's like, okay, let's just throw all of them in there, have them battle it out in camp, and let's see which one the best one is. Because you still have Mike Hughes on the other side, who's a decent number 2 corner. If another one of these corners can kind of step up and beat the guy, great. Like you have another corner, and then once Mike Hughes' contract comes up, I think it's in a couple of years, they can let him walk in, and Cameron Dancer, one of the other corners that they drafted, can kind of just fill that gap.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's interesting. They needed a wide receiver, they got one. They needed a cornerback, they got one with trading back, so they were able to grab some extra capital, which is always nice. So we'll see. I think, again, I don't know too much about cornerbacks in the Big 12, but we'll see what happens. And I think it's something that can, again, they needed it. Mike Zimmer is much, much smarter than I am, so I'm sure he'll figure it out. Their second round pick, their only second round pick, I apologize. They grabbed Ezra Cleveland, offensive tackle out of Boise State. This was an interesting pick. A lot of people for whatever reason, had Cleveland potentially going in the top 10 to the Browns to go to Cleveland. I think that's the literal only reason.
Yeah.
But dropping all the way to 58, and enough people had him with a fringe first round, potentially second round. Then I heard some people, they barely had him in their top 100. How did you feel about him, and how do you think he'll be able to fit into the offensive line here?
Yeah, he's a raw tackle coming out of Boise State, so I understand why there was no way he was going to go first round. It was just because of the rumors that were swirling around him with the love of the Bears, and all of a sudden the Jaguars were in love with him, and there were a couple of teams that were kind of thrown into the mix. There were teams talking about trading back up into the first round to grab him just because he was like this incredible talent that everyone saw. And clearly that's not what everyone thought, because he lasted all the way to where he did in the second round. So especially with how this roster is constructed, like he's played left tackle at Boise State. All right, cool. They paid Riley Reif all that money to come in and be the guy. Great. So now you have Ezra Cleveland to come in, kind of develop a little bit, kind of not. I'm not going to say sit a year just because offensive linemen, the way the position is, that those guys are always going down. They're always getting hurt. You need solid depth behind, especially left tackle, for a guy like Kirk Cousins who doesn't actually feel pressure well from the backside. So with him, you have a guy that's immediately going to come in and step up in front of Riley Reif. And even if the way the season goes, and knock on wood, if we get to training camp and everything, maybe Cleveland starts over Riley Reif. He becomes a trade piece or a cuttable piece, save some money, kind of do whatever they need to do. Or worst case, you have a great experienced backup, a guy who can also play right tackle as well. So it was a solid pick for them that, given the spot where they took him, it just makes it look that much better.
Yeah. Again, I think that's one of the things about the draft. It is need, but it's also value. And if you can marry those two things together, that's great. But if there's one position that I will always say you want the most depth possible, it's offensive line. In any way, shape, or form, the most offensive linemen you can have, the most likely better your team's going to be, because one of those guys will be able to beat out some of the others. So going to the third round, they're the 25th picks, 89th overall, Cameron Dantzler out of Mississippi State. He apparently was very polarizing when it came to a lot of people. I guess he's very long, but not very big, if that makes sense. I mean, tell me how you think, like, and how is he specifically different than Gladney, the cornerback that they already took?
Yeah, so Dancer's a better cover quarter in my opinion. He has this build of being like 6'2", but like 190 pounds. But from what everyone says from Mississippi State, he is strong at the point of attack. He's very strong when he comes up attack. So it's not like he's coming out there as like this string bean, so to speak. But he's pretty well built to play corner. Has the ability to blitz off of the end, which Mike Zimmer. If there's one guy, if there's one defensive mind in the league that loves blitzing corners more, it's Mike Zimmer. So they in Cameron Dantzler and Gladney, the guys that they drafted, two guys that can kind of blitz off of the corner. So it just kind of adds to the chess pieces that Mike Zimmer loves to use with those guys.
Yeah, and again, they needed it. They lost two. And so they're grabbing two. I mean, you can't really rely on rookies, especially now we're getting into the third round. You can't quite rely on them, but it's definitely something that it's pretty important to have somebody there to play. I think that part is it's definitely something. So we'll see what happens. So moving on to the fourth round now. And again, this is when it starts to get crazy, because I think they have 10 picks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 maybe picks. I don't know. I might have miscounted from the fourth round on. So I don't think we need to touch on every single one of these guys, but we'll go round by round. So fourth round, 117 overall, DJ Wanham, defensive end out of South Carolina. 130 overall, James Lynch, defensive end / tackle out of Baylor. 132 overall, a couple picks later, Troy Dye, inside linebacker out of Oregon. So the theme here is defense. How do these three guys, two of them being defensive linemen, one being an inside linebacker, how do you feel that Mike Zimmer will be able to utilize them properly in this defense?
They did phenomenal in the fourth round here. You grabbed three guys who are players that will play immediately. Whether even if they're not starting, they're going to be rotational guys that are going to come in, especially with the way we use defensive linemen today. Anyway, so DJ Wanham, he's more of an edge rusher, like 6'3", 280 pounds, 275 pounds, give or take. He's a two-time captain, 3-year starter in the SEC. Perfect, prolific.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Everything you kind of want to see. And obviously, he produced while he was there. Then you go to James Lynch at Baylor. All-time sacks leader at Baylor. He's going to play the 3 technique, so he obviously he won't be getting all those sacks while he was there. But you know what? When he has 13 and a half sacks last year and 19 and a half tackles for a loss, that's pretty incredible for a guy that was playing like a small defensive tackle position.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a quicker guy that was able to utilize his speed to beat the guard on the inside and then get to the quarterback or whoever had the ball in the backfield. And then you go back in the fourth round, and you grab Troy Dye. Troy Dye, a guy knows the ball, running all over the field, led Oregon in tackle every single year he was there, 4 straight years. And he looks and plays just like Anthony Barr, who was one of Mike Zimmer's favorite players. Barr obviously is still there, so he's going to learn from a position and a guy that he said he admired when he was coming up. So they did phenomenal here in the fourth round.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, again, as you said, like they don't have to start, but if they can be a part of that rotation, especially on the defensive line and doing something along those lines, figuring out a way to utilize an inside linebacker, especially if it's someone that does remind, as you said, Mike Zimmer of Anthony Barr, one of his favorite players. I think, again, that's 3 phenomenal picks that they could roll with. In the 5th round, they have 169 overall, Harrison Hand, another cornerback out of Temple. 176 overall, KJ Osborne, wide receiver out of Miami. So again, going cornerback, wide receiver. We already saw that once so far in this draft. How do you feel about these 2 guys in the 5th round, and how do you think they can come in to start playing sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I was a little confused because Harrison has more of a scheme quarterback. And from what a lot of people were saying is that he was more of like a cover 3 corner, a guy that's going to kind of, I don't know, cover a third of the field because he's not the fastest, he's not the biggest, not the strongest. A guy who will kind of stay in his zone and really guard his spot to a key. So I think at that point it was more of like a depth pick, especially for how few corners they had on their roster. Then they needed to add talent quickly, especially because they are in win now. With the way Kirk Cousins' deal is set up, they have to find a way to get further into the playoffs, push towards the Super Bowl, because they have a talented team. They just have to, I don't know, just find a way to win it.
I mean, they were in the NFC Championship game 3 years ago, right?
Yep. They have to get there. Otherwise, you're not justifying Kirk Cousins' contract with how it's everything's fully guaranteed. And then KJ Osborne, he was a transfer, played pretty well on a Miami team. It was like 50 catches for like 850 yards, 5 touchdowns. And from, I don't know, just a Miami team that wasn't very great last year. He's more of a return specialist, so you're kind of just adding to depth, a little bit of a different player. I'm not going to say he's more like Stephon Diggs, but he's more of an explosive wide receiver than Justin Jefferson, who was a slot, obviously coming out. But we'll kind of see what Osborne can add to this roster.
And as you said, they don't need a million wide receivers because they play a lot of 2 tight end sets, and they probably are going to have, Dalvin Cook doing most of the work anyway. But I still think it's, again, just it's nice to have some depth there. It's nice to get some players in and see what happens. So the 6th and 7th round picks, go through these pretty quick because they're 6th and 7th round picks. 203 overall in the 6th round, Blake Brandel, offensive tackle out of Oregon State. 205 overall in the 6th round, Josh Metellus, safety out of Michigan. 225 overall in the 7th round, Kenny Willekes, defensive end out of Michigan State. 7th round again, 244 overall, Nate Stanley out of Iowa. 249 overall, Brian Cole II, safety out of Michigan State. And 253 overall, Kyle Hinton. So while they had a lot of picks, 3 of them are literally in the last 11 overall. So I guess it's something. Do you see any of these guys cracking the roster? I mean, like, that's an important part of this too. If you have 14 picks, 15 picks, not everybody can make the roster at that point.
Kenny Willekes is one of my favorite players coming out this year. He was a walk-on, showed up at Michigan State, 6'2", 220 pounds as a linebacker. Left Michigan State is like 270 pounds. So you put on like 50 pounds of, I'm only going to assume it's muscle coming out of Michigan State. And he what did he leave as the all-time tackle for loss leader with 51. He's a guy that, He's one of those, I forget which draft guy talks about. He's a lunch pail guy. Comes in every day, works his ass off, comes in, and he's just going to just do everything he can to make this team and find a way to make the starting roster. Especially with the way their right defensive end position looks. You have Ifedi Ogunigbo. I honestly don't even know who he is. And obviously Anthony Zettel, pretty decent player out of San Francisco. But Kenny Willekes, I very likely see a situation where he's the starting right defensive end in this at that slot.
That's crazy. I mean, to get someone that late and have them, as you said, most of these guys, just having them be in the rotation is a good thing. I mean, having them as a 7th round defensive starter off the bat, that's insane. But hey, I guess we'll see what happens. So that the Vikings, I think, I mean, it's hard to say they did bad because they had a million picks, right? Like, and they did the 2 things that they needed: grab a good wide receiver and then grab some cornerbacks, and everything else on top of it, I think is it's gravy at that point.
Yep. No, they address their needs. They did everything they needed to. I don't understand the Nate Stanley pick. I thought he was not very good at Iowa. And then like some of the other players that they drafted at the end, just more of just depth position, especially because Anthony Harris is potentially on the outs. But we're kind of waiting to see what's going on with their safety there. So they drafted two guys who could potentially fill the void or at least add depth to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know. They'll probably be in the playoffs. They'll probably beat the Saints in heartbreaking fashion, and then they'll probably lose to a team that's just better than them. So we'll see what happens there. The last team, we did save this for the absolute last team in our entire NFL draft breakdown, which I'm excited for. We have the Packers. Free agents, they added a couple guys, Christian Kirksey, Ricky Wagner, Devin Funchess, okay, I guess. And then they lost Blake Martinez, Brian Balaga, Jimmy Graham, and Kyle Fackrell.
Fackrell.
Thank you. I have to get used to it because he's on the Giants now. So a couple of those guys, the two linebackers, Blake Martinez and Kyle Fackrell, went to the Giants. Brian Balaga, I went to where did he go? I can't remember off the top of my Chargers.
He stayed in the eighth.
Somewhere weird.
Yeah. I believe it was the Chargers.
Whatever. And then Jimmy Graham, that's kind of addition by subtraction. So what do they need? Justin, what do you think?
They very clearly need a quarterback play.
Yes, obviously they needed a quarterback. I think we all knew that going into it. And hey, they did something, right?
Yeah. So I mean, in all sincerity, they needed wide receivers. They need skill position players. Aaron Jones' contract is up at the end of this year. So considering the phenomenal season he put together last year and the very good season he put together the year before that, a guy that you're going to kind of look towards as a future building block of this team, granted, because he hasn't gotten a whole lot of touches. So it's not like his knees are worn down, his body isn't beat up too much. He has had a little bit of an injury history. So I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why they took a running back in the second round. But they really need wide receivers. Like, just give Aaron Rodgers some talent. He's thrown one touchdown pass to a player drafted in the first round, and that's Mercedes Lewis, and he threw it last year. Mercedes Lewis was drafted 14 years ago by the Jaguars. That's really the guy that you're going to like. I don't know.
I think that stat's better. I think it's better that he has one touchdown to someone than zero, because the fact that it's someone that was drafted 14 years ago in the first round. That's what makes the stat even better, and it's ridiculous. But yeah, everybody and their mom knew. My mom knew. Your mom knew that they needed wide receivers. And what did they do? Of course, they didn't draft a wide receiver. They brought in Devin Funchess, who was okay, I think, for like one game in Carolina. So I don't know, man. It made no sense. So of course, with their first round pick, they trade up 26 overall. We already know it. Jordan Love, Utah damn it, I screwed it up. Jordan Love, quarterback out of Utah State. You were in love with him. Yeah. You absolutely loved everything about him. Yep. Derek was not the biggest fan, but how stupid of a pick is this?
It's all time. Like, I don't understand. Like, Aaron Rodgers, I get it. I think he turns 36 in December. So like, you're still getting some good years out of him, especially with how long some of these quarterbacks are playing. It doesn't even look like he's falling apart. Like, I understand that he's had a little bit of an injury history and you need some depth behind him, but it doesn't mean that you should trade up to grab a quarterback that no one saw as a first round talent other than, I guess, myself. Like, no one else was like, they came out and said they were scared of the Colts trading up to the first round. Adam Schefter went on a podcast yesterday and said there was no way the Colts were trading up to the first round, especially not to take a quarterback. So I don't know if they scared themselves into believing that they need to go up and grab the quarterback, but I get it. When the Chiefs traded all that up to grab Patrick Mahomes, it was looked at as a dumb pick. Everyone looked at him like, okay, you're grabbing this guy with great arm talent, but we just haven't seen it playing in a Big 12, playing in that pass friendly offense. I just don't see it. But I see a lot of Jordan Love in him. It's mainly because I see the arm talent. The accuracy isn't there. There's mechanics wise, he's not near what Mahomes is right now. But you know what? He's going to have a couple years to kind of sit and watch. But my worry is Aaron Rodgers is going to force his way out of there. I really hope he doesn't go to the Patriots. And I understand what the Packers could get for him. And if you think about it, if you kind of take a step back and you look at, like, okay, you have an injury-prone quarterback, a guy who hasn't played a full season in a couple of years. He's been banged up. I mean, it could be the fact that his wide receivers are never open, so he has to extend plays all the time and try and do something miraculous to get the ball down the field just to get a first down. So I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do with Jordan Love. Like, do you have him sit for a couple of years, just like Aaron Rodgers did? Aaron Rodgers, from what everyone's already said, he's already reached out to Jordan Love. He's already congratulated him. He's going to take him under his wing and do whatever he needs to do. He's not going to teach him everything that he knows because he doesn't want him taking his spot. It's a competition at the end of the day. Like, it's his job. He doesn't want a guy to come in and take his job, nor does anyone want that in their position in their life. So dumb pick, even dumber that they traded up for him. But in 3 years, we can't bash them now for it, because in 3 years, if Jordan Love comes out and he looks all of a sudden like Patrick Mahomes, everyone's going to be praising it. But at the same time, right now, it looks bad.
It looks bad. I think if they waited and drafted him where they were, which I think 30 or 31 overall, I think everyone's like, okay, whatever, that makes sense. But the fact that they traded up and they lost capital to not then be able to go grab one of those wide receivers, which is just another conversation. I think that's like another just blunder from this draft. I think trading up for Jordan Love was a dumb idea. So I think taking him was a dumb idea. Not really. I think Aaron Rodgers signed his 4-year contract 2 years ago. So he has 2 years left on his deal, if I'm not mistaken. And he gets paid an absurd amount of money. We've seen that most of the teams that win, their quarterback is on a rookie deal. Not to say that Jordan Love is going to be great and they're going to have that opportunity, but paying a quarterback $30-something million it's just not the best way to win. I mean, look at all the teams. Jimmy Garoppolo is only making $20 million, which was a ridiculous amount at the time, and now it's a bargain. Patrick Mahomes obviously was making like $2 million. He was in his third year of a 5-year rookie deal. So from that standpoint, again, I can justify it. I can't justify trading up for it because, again, you were in the NFC Championship game last year. The biggest thing you did not have was a wide receiver, and you could not grab a wide receiver. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. And again, self-awareness, like we were talking about with Robert Quinn flipping coins and then telling us about it. The self-awareness from the Packers brass, GM, coach, whoever made that pick, it just doesn't make sense to me that they would go and do something like that. And I don't know. It's just, I don't think they're going to trade him. I think, in fantasy football, you could get a lot for him in fantasy, Madden, let's call it. You could get a lot for him. But the fact that he's 36, going to be 37, because I don't think he's getting traded this year. The fact that he's owed $30-something million a year, I just don't think that that's going to be possible. And I think, in 2 years, I would not be surprised if Jordan Love is the starting quarterback for the Packers. And we're all like, oh, this was something. Because as you said, they traded a lot for Patrick Mahomes. Now, were the Chiefs as close as the Packers? I don't think. Is Alex Smith anywhere nearly as good as Aaron Rodgers? No, not really. But it's still just one of those things where it just makes zero sense. And the fact they compounded it by not drafting a single wide receiver in one of the deepest wide receiver drafts in recent history. So I don't know. I think it was dumb, but whatever.
If I could play devil's advocate, though, if you kind of go into the season, they play the season out. It sounds like Jordan Love starts to progressing, and then they really love what he's able to do in practice. Maybe towards the end of the season, if he gets a game in there, we'll see how he does in training camp, preseason games. If Aaron Rodgers comes out, and all of a sudden they're like, you know what? We're going to trade him. We want 3 first-round draft picks. All of a sudden, I don't know, a team like the Jaguars next year was like, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's grab Aaron Rodgers. We'll get 3 possible 4 years out of him. We'll kind of see what he does. Here's 3 first-round draft picks. One's probably a guaranteed top 5 pick. Another one is probably, I don't know, the Rams top 25 pick, and then obviously the Jaguars following season, which they'll probably suck, so it'll be early again, even with Aaron Rodgers hypothetically as their quarterback. The Packers could do a lot with that. And if they don't need a quarterback, they would have a top 5 pick in a very deep draft coming out next year. You have a guy like Jamar Chase that you could take very early. And all of a sudden you can kind of keep adding to that. And then they go into next season. It's like, okay, we have Jordan Love at quarterback. We have Jamar Chase at wide receiver. They draft a left tackle because the left tackle is pretty deep next year as well. And they could really put together a team that Matt LaFleur wants to run the ball. He wants to just run the ball down your throat, and that's not what Aaron Rodgers does. But also at the same time, you take your players and you put them in the best position to succeed. Aaron Jones looked great last year, and whether it was Matt LaFleur's scheme or not, the fact that Aaron Rodgers, your quarterback, is taking off a hell of a lot on his shoulders just because you're constantly having to guard the deep middle of the field, just because you can't have Aaron Rodgers beat you with an 85-yard touchdown pass.
We've seen that happen to many teams. The Packers have done that to the Cowboys. They've done it to the Bears. I'm sure they've done it to many other. The Lions. They did it to the Giants. So it happens. It's not too surprising. And Jamal Williams was pretty good last year when he was on the field as well. So I think Matt LaFleur, obviously coming out of San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken, coming out of that same kind of Kyle Shanahan running offense, it looks like. It makes sense. And does it make sense to then pay a quarterback $35 million a deal and take up that much of the cap? I don't know. I don't think so, but at the same time, it's Aaron Rodgers.
Mhm.
So how do you say no to that? So we'll see. I don't know. It's interesting. And if you think, again, self-awareness, if the Packers get 3 first-round draft picks and they spend a top 5 pick on a wide receiver, man, that would be hysterical. And I
Yeah.
do think Jamar Chase is that damn good. We saw him win Blitnikoff. I always get him.
Blitnikoff Award.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. I got it right this time. Best wide receiver in college football. If they then draft him with one of the picks that they traded for Aaron Rodgers, that is insult to injury right there. So moving on, pick 62 overall, second round, AJ Dillon, running back out of Boston College.
Mhm.
They didn't need a running back, as you said, but then again, Aaron Jones will be, his contract's coming up. He was only on a 4-year deal. And I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't know how it's going to work, but how do you feel about AJ Dillon? I know he was great. There's been a couple really good running backs come out of Boston College recently that have done absolutely nothing in the NFL. So how do you think he might fare in the Packers offense?
I've loved AJ Dillon for years, and like he's put up some very good stats. I get that he was playing at Boston College; he wasn't playing the greatest competition. But you know what? For a guy that's 250 pounds, 6 foot tall, ran a 4.53 40, and jumped a 41-inch vertical, that's insane numbers for a guy of his stature. The knock on him is he does not catch well. He has stone hands. But you know what? Derrick Henry came into the league. If you have a chance of drafting Derrick Henry in that position, why not take a guy like that? He's going to kind of get a year because you're gonna feed Aaron Jones a lot. You're going to feed Jamal Williams. He's not going to play a whole lot. He is going to come down on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, and goal line. And that's a key area that they struggled in last year. Like they need someone to just push that ball into the end zone. And you're getting a great guy to do it. So he's going to come in and he's going to kind of be the next guy. He's going to be the next man up. He's going to come in, just going to be the running back that will, I guess, be the heir apparent. I mean, we'll kind of see if the Packers can find a way to get Aaron Jones cheap. Granted, if he has a good year, stays healthy, then you're going to pay him. But then this pick looks dumb. So because you basically just drafted a running back, a fullback in the 2nd round.
And it's. You know, I was talking about it. I can't remember who I was talking about it with. It was one of these other draft breakdowns where they're already drafting for the future, right? Like with their first 2 picks, I mean, you were just in the NFC Championship game. What did you need? A wide receiver in any capacity. What did you lose? You lost Brian Bulaga, one of the best tackles that you've had in recent history. I mean, they've had a lot of good ones, and he's been pretty damn good. So losing him as well. So you might need someone on the offensive line as well. So you go with a quarterback and a running back. Quarterback, someone. Best case scenario, he doesn't see the field in 3 years. Running back, overvalued or undervalued position. You have 2 that are good. Now, granted, I understand Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are more alike each other than they are like AJ Dillon. But it's just so far so confusing. That's really all I can say. And again, as you said, heir apparent, like, all right, that's great. But it's one thing if you were a fringe playoff team. It's one thing if you made it and it was kind of a nice story. But to start looking for heir apparents a couple years down the road
when you were in the NFC Championship game.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't get it. So we'll see what happens. You have a stat here, 40 touchdowns in 3 years. That's freaking insane. Yep. So that is definitely something interesting. So
wait, one more stat for him though. 150 plus rushing yards in 42% of his starts. So half the games he played in, he ran for 150 yards.
That's insane.
Once again, you're looking at the ACC. You're looking at a guy who is an absolute freak of nature, a running back, and a guy who they constantly fed the ball. So he was getting his touches. But you know what? When you have a big guy that big, all you have to do is just find a way to give him a little bit of daylight, and he's going to run over these defensive backs.
I don't know. I'm out on defense or on running backs out of Boston College. The Giants. I was all about Andre Williams when he came out, and he was a complete. I mean, he was a 4th round, so he's not a bust, but he sucked. So that is something pretty. And 81 missed tackles as well. That's pretty impressive. So he knows what he's doing. I mean, it's definitely something. So 3rd round, 94 overall. Still need a wide receiver, and they take a fullback, as you said, a glorified fullback with their 2nd round pick, and they take an actual fullback / tight end with their 3rd round pick out of Cincinnati, Josiah DeGuara. DeGuara. That's a nice name. I don't know, man. What's going on?
I don't get it. And you know what? He's stout at run. He's stout at pass catching. Like he's a decent tight end, fullback, H-type, H-back, however they're going to use him. But like you have Mercedes Lewis, so you have a blocking tight end. You drafted Jay Sternberger last year, who's another on the line tight end. So why are you taking a fullback here, especially when you just drafted AJ Dillon? Like what? None of these picks make sense. None of these picks. No one would ever take a quarterback that you're looking to start in 3 years. No one would take a running back that you would look to start in 2 years. That is a glorified fullback. No one in the right mind would take a
An actual
fullback
fullback.
in the third round. Like, what are you doing? Like, this guy could have fell to the fifth or sixth round. You could have easily gotten him there, and that would have been the best pick that you guys took because you took an actual skill position that could possibly help Aaron Rodgers. But if they're actually going to use him as a fullback, what the hell does that help? Like, how does that help this offense? You just are they trying to find ways to mimic the 49ers and just create like these incredible run schemes where Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball 10 to 15 times a game? Like, no, like that's not how this offense should work. But you know what? There's a reason they make more money than I do, and there's a reason they're in the positions that they are. But I mean, I'm just going to critique it until they prove me wrong.
Exactly. And it's again, we were talking about it coming from Kyle Shanahan's offense, Mike Shanahan's offense, that zone run blocking scheme. Maybe that is what he wants to do. Maybe he's just saying like, okay, this is what I inherited, and this is how I'm going to slowly make my way to getting this to be exactly what I want it to be. And, that's definitely an opportunity. It's definitely a possibility. And I don't know who's making the picks, whether it's the GM, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, or if it's Matt LaFleur, but it doesn't make sense. The fact that you ever take a fullback really in a draft is insane to me, because I feel like I'm not going to say a dime a dozen, but there's the difference, the standard deviation, the margin is not that much from the best one to, the 10th best one, in my opinion, considering what they're going to do. They're going to block and they're going to catch a ball as a trick play, as a gadget every once in a while. So it doesn't really make sense to me. It is what it is. So then they didn't have a 4th round pick because they traded it up to go grab Jordan Love with the 26th overall pick. So then they have 1 5th round pick, 175 Kamal Martin, linebacker out of Minnesota, still needed a wide receiver. In the 6th round, they have 192 overall, John Runyon, guard out of Michigan. That one actually makes sense. 6th round, again, a couple more 6th rounder. 206 overall, Jake Hansen, center out of Oregon, and 209, so back-to-back, Simon Stepanek, guard out of Indiana. Still need a wide receiver, but they go linebacker, guard, center, guard. Tell me about these guys. How do they fit? And, as you were saying before, especially with these offensive linemen.
Yeah, so they had a need an inside linebacker. They run that 3-4 scheme, so they need 4 linebackers, and they're pretty set at linebackers, but they needed one more inside guy, and Kamal Martin's going to kind of fill that gap. Flies around the field.
Losing Blake Martinez and Kyle Fracco, yes.
Exactly, yes. So you need a guy to step up, and you're grabbing a pretty good guy at Minnesota. Then you draft John Runyon. This is about the spot that he was going to go. His father played for the Eagles, so he has that pedigree. He had that toughness at Michigan and constantly playing hurt. He played right tackle, he played right guard, he played left guard. So he played all over. So like he can really he can kind of be that Packers chess piece where you can kind of move him around if someone goes down. Then they drafted Jake Hansen, who I guess they were once again looking towards the future a little bit, because Corey Linsley has been a pretty good center for them over the years, and I understand that his contract expires, but so whatever.
Centers aren't that expensive, though.
They aren't, but with the way their roster is shaken up and with how much Aaron Rodgers is taking of that salary cap, you're always kind of a little strapped.
Exactly. Yep.
And then Stepaniak, just another guy. He played right tackle at Indiana. Sounds like they're going to move him to guard, so just another depth piece pick.
And hey, you need depth off the offensive line. I will shout that from the mountaintops. You always need that. 7th round, 2 more chances to draft a running back. And they take 236 overall, Vernon Scott, safety out of TCU, and 242 overall, Jonathan Garvin, edge out of Miami. How do you think these, they always need help on defense, I feel like, in the Packers, in Green Bay. How do you think these guys, is it mostly just depth at this point?
Yeah, so it's just depth. Vernon Scott, it's nice with him because he can kind of play a little bit of free safety. He can play slot corner, so you can move him around depending on what you kind of need that week or pending injuries, that kind of stuff. Just because the way Lambeau's field is, the players are always constantly getting hurt. And then Jonathan Garvin, just another guy. They needed another rush outside linebacker when they lost Fackrell. So it's just a guy to come in, just add depth to a position. But you know what? When you need wide receiver, you had one need in this entire draft, and you just completely went against it. Like, why would they come into this thinking like, no, we're pretty set with Valdez Scantling and some of these and Devin Funchess at wide receiver. I understand you have Devontae Adams.
Yes.
But he's getting double covered. And you can see Aaron Rodgers' frustration when he's rolling out to his right and he's looking for someone to get open. And Adams, who was hurt last year, so there was no one to throw to. And he's just like, okay, what the hell do I do now?
It was fun watching Jordy Nelson in his prime and Devontae Adams on his come up. That was a fun team to watch because Aaron Rodgers is just slinging the ball. And maybe this is the Packers' way of saying, some reports came out, and I'm not even gonna entertain them, but maybe this is the way of just saying like, hey, we're actually just going to run the ball.
Mhm.
We know because we have Devontae Adams, he's going to get double teamed. And we know because we have Aaron Rodgers, you assume we're going to throw the ball 100 times, but we're actually just going to run the ball. And they did a pretty good job at running the ball last year. It's just when it comes down to it, if you have no wide receivers, it's ridiculous. There's really nothing you can do, and you still need them to do something to make sure that you can be a complete team. And that's unfortunately not something that they're interested in. Maybe Devontae Adams comes back, or he's going to come back. Hopefully he's healthy all year, and I think that'll be pretty big. I know Geronimo Allison is gone, if I'm not mistaken. He went off to like Detroit or something. I don't know. He went somewhere. So you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I feel like there's like one more guy.
Equinemius St. Brown.
Okay.
And the kid that a lot of people have liked and that I got to watch also was Allen Lazard out of Iowa State last year. He was a pretty good wide receiver for the Jaguars. Last year, the Jaguars kind of looked at their wide receiver positional group like, okay, you know what, we're okay with what we have right here. Let him go. Found a home with the Packers and played pretty well for being an undrafted free agent. So he could obviously be a sneaky fantasy pick just because Adams is going to get he's going to get his targets, but he's going to be double covered a lot. So there is going to be another wide receiver that's going to need to step up. We kind of kept saying MVS last year, Valdez-Scantling, he was going to be the guy. He just wasn't. And Devin Funch is just, I don't know,
whatever,
tall, slow, and fat. Like that's a terrible wide receiver that like body type that you want to have.
So we'll see what happens. I don't know. Again, they needed one thing. They didn't address it. They didn't need a couple things. So, of course, they addressed those. I don't know. I'm not going to ask for a grade, but, man, how do you think the Packers did in their 2020 draft?
Without, like, the 3-year outlook and just kind of having that knowledge of the future and really looking at it, I mean, this was the worst draft out of everyone that drafted this year. Like, you didn't draft the needs that you had, or you waited way too long in the offensive line. So you didn't draft anything that you actually needed early enough to actually make an instant impact on your team. Instead, it was like, okay, LaFleur came in. He's like, this is my team. I'm going to get the guys that I want right now. And Aaron Rodgers is like, okay, now what do I do? How am I supposed to do this with the same offense from last year, which we saw how good it can be. You just need another receiver.
Just need one more receiver, and they couldn't even get one of those. So overall, this was a lot of fun. So thank you for doing it. How do you think the division shakes out this year? The Lions, they were very bad last year, probably going to be very bad again. The Bears are just crazy. I want them to be good because I think it would be hysterical storyline. They'd just be funny. The Vikings got significantly better through the draft, but lost a lot through free agency, and the Packers are just weird. So how do you think, how do you think the division shakes out next year?
It's going to be the Vikings and the Packers kind of vying for that top position. They're both kind of bringing the same talent forward. Like, I understand the Vikings lost a lot of defensive pieces, specifically a defensive back. So they're going to be very young in that position, which is not a spot you want to be very young at. But you know what? You have 3 corners that you drafted early. There's other guys that will always make an instant impact. So, and Mike Zimmer is a great defensive mind, so he'll find ways to put them in good schemes. It sounds like LaFleur is taking control of the Packers. He's like, it's my way or the highway. Get on and get off. You're going to do what I want to do. Granted, I mean, got into the NFC Championship game last year, so clearly they did well enough there.
Rookie head coach.
And then I agree with the Lions. They're whatever, but the X factor is going to be the Bears. Can Mitchell Trubisky take that next step? Is he going to put in all the effort? Granted, this is just a weird year with everything that's going on, that he's not going to have the time that he needs to grow with these guys. And was he actually really that hurt last year to the point where he wasn't able to use his legs to extend plays and do what he does best, which is, that's not what he does best, is run the ball. Like, he's still a pretty good quarterback. There's a reason he's in the NFL, but something that greatly affects his game is his ability to use his legs.
Mobility,
so does he come in this year with that mobility still there? And all of a sudden it's like, okay, cool. Like, we have an offense again with 9 tight ends. So we'll see. I could definitely see the Packers being at the NFC Championship game again. I have a hard time seeing anyone getting past the Saints, but we've said that the last couple of years, and it hasn't panned out for them. But the Bears, that defense is disgusting. It's so freaking good, and they're just wasting it like the Jaguars wasted 2017, and that's why they keep making all these jokes about it. It's like, all right, cool. Then they traded for Nick Foles, the exact same thing that the Jaguars just did. So I don't know. Does Nick Foles come in and make that team into a Super Bowl contender? No, I don't think so. I watched it firsthand. He's not a very good quarterback, but you know what? He could be a step up above Mitchell Trubisky, which maybe that's all they need.
And you said it before with the Bears. I mean, their offense actually beat their defense because they couldn't stay on the field. They couldn't score points. The defense is always under stress. That's not a great way to have a team. You want that defense flying. You want to be up by 10 points and let that defense just do whatever the hell they want to do.
Khalil Mack.
Exactly. And then you'll go absolutely to town there. I mean, Robert Quinn as well. We'll see. I think, again, you made a good point. I don't think he's worth the money, but if it works with the cap, it works with the cap. Bringing him in, just opposing Khalil Mack, he's going to get most of the attention. So you need someone on the other side that can do something against one-on-one in most situations. So we'll see what happens. I know, again, we have that third playoff spot, and I think I've given it away to just about every team in the league at this point. How do you think? I mean, I only think the Vikings and the Packers have a chance. I do not think we're getting two teams out of the AFC North, considering the AFC South is going to be stacked again, and the NFC, I apologize, the NFC North, the NFC South is going to be stacked as well with Tom Brady down there, Drew Brees. And then you have the NFC West, where Seattle just always finds a way. San Francisco's coming off the Super Bowl win. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Packers don't make the playoffs this year. Even with that extra spot, I think it's going to be way too competitive. I also wouldn't be surprised if this is the year of the NFC East, where the Cowboys and the Eagles both say, no, we want to win 10 games instead of 0. So, we'll see what happens there. But do you see two teams coming out of this division this year, or do you think it's most likely just one? If I put it at 1.5, what are you taking?
I'll take the over, just because we almost always see two teams from the NFC North make it. And obviously, we're going to throw the Lions out of there just because I don't think they have enough talent to actually make an impact. That Bears defense is legit. They have a very good chance at replicating what they did 2 years ago, and really pushing forward as long as their quarterback can take a step up. If any of their quarterbacks can take a step up, it could be who the hell knows. I mean, you still have Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. He's phenomenal talent. I wonder if that locker room all of a sudden now gets divided. It's like, okay, half a locker room's LaFleur, half of them is Aaron Rodgers. That's going to create a rift. You never want to do that. You never want to find a way to divide a locker room. And then the Vikings, I mean, they find a way to win. They every year they find a way to win 10 games, 11 games. We'll kind of see how the schedule comes out, and then we'll kind of start mixing and matching, kind of really seeing what they can do. But you know what? Dalvin Cook's a hell of a running back. Kirk Cousins can still throw the ball pretty well. They have two very good wide receivers, especially now that they drafted Justin Jefferson. And their biggest thing is going to come down to the play of their corners. They really need those corners to make a veteran impact on that team.
Which is going to be hard. As we said before, corner is one of the hardest positions to transfer, and it's not great to have an entire position group be young. Again, watched it firsthand with the Giants last year, and it was not great. Granted, the rest of the defense for the Vikings is going to be much better. If they can get some pass rush, I mean, you can then, it makes it a lot easier for the cornerback, so we'll see what happens. But Justin, this was awesome. Last one, we did all 8 in 10 days. Kudos to you, Derek, Jared, Nick, Sean. Appreciate everyone coming on. Thank you all so much. Justin, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thanks, Mike.